I want to talk to you about dismantling the bioethic lies, and there's so much to cover. I only have a few minutes, but we have to kind of start with definitions. So the question is, what is bioethics? How many of you know what bioethics is? Okay, not everybody. But see, I think before we ask our question, what is bioethics, we have to ask ourselves the question, what are ethics? Ethics are moral principles that guide and govern our behavior. Basically, what dictates what's right and wrong? Anybody have any morals in here? Great, half of you, that's great. But see, bioethics is the study, basically, of how these ethics play out in biological advances, in biology and research, and then the application, particularly in the field of medicine. And the father of bioethics it's actually really interesting because we're talking about abortion largely at this conference, obviously, and yet it was the eugenics movement that brought us what were considered the eugenic advances, birth control and abortion, the devastation of abortion. And yet it was the eugenics movement that had no problem experimenting on humans all the time. So the father of bioethics is Dr. Henry K. Beecher. He was an anesthesiologist and medical ethicist, and the first to study what we call the placebo effect. Anybody who's ever been sick as a child, maybe your parent just gave you something to make you think that you're getting medicine, and because you thought that you had something good in you, it was the placebo effect. You got better. Well, he studied that, but he also called out the medical field for some inhumane and gross violations of ethical standards, which obviously David Delight and the Center for Medical Progress is calling out. And that's why he's considered the father of bioethics. See, the American eugenics movement, which was rooted, of course, in a vile, racist, and elitist pseudoscience, had no problem in the means justifying the ends. So that's why they did all kinds of experimentations. You've heard of the Tuskegee study, for instance, where they brought in African-American males who had syphilis and promising to treat them, and they were going to study this treatment, but they actually never treated them. And so these are just one of so many examples of bioethical issues with the medical field. I find it funny that sometimes the medical field thinks of itself as morally superior. But you can find example after example throughout human history of medical professionals and scientists acting completely immorally. But the thing about the eugenics movement, it always looked at human beings, a certain swath of human beings, as being unfit, unworthy of life. They would be deemed feeble-minded, for instance, which, of course, today we could pretty much say that most of Congress would fit that category. That's a whole other story. But eugenicists were always talking about how they had to eliminate suffering, right? The problem was they weren't eliminating suffering. They aimed to eliminate those who suffered instead of eliminating the causes of the suffering. That's why one of my childhood heroes, and you've all heard of him, George Washington Carver, he was amazing because he lived in a time, of course, as a black individual who was born into slavery, who was adopted and loved. Many people don't realize that. But he figured out that creativity, the kind of creativity that God can give you, can help bring solutions to problems. So his solution to poverty was not to eliminate the impoverished, but it was to creatively figure out ways to elevate those who were impoverished. And that's why I love this particular quote from George Washington Carver. Resolve to be tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and the wrong. Sometime in life, you will have been all of these. And so when we think of these bioethical issues, we have to understand that there is no picture-perfect thing. There's no one who fits that picture of perfection. And if you think that you fit that, I'm just going to dispel that right now. But we don't, and that's why I love doing what I do through the Radiance Foundation and illuminating that every human life has purpose.
Life is never picture perfect. Human beings come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, and abilities. No matter how much we plan, no matter how much we think we're prepared, the unplanned happens all the time. It's how we respond to the unexpected that shows our true humanity. But many do not see the value of every human life. Too many are willing to discard those who don't fit the picture of perfection. Abortion destroys the chance to love and to be loved. We never know what will fill the frames of our lives, or how empty those frames can be when we allow exceptions.
Every life is a gift.
I'm a firm believer in this. I assume you are too. This is my family. I grew up in a small family of 15. I have six brothers, 6 sisters, and my family's full of those exceptions, those that the world would write off because they were unplanned, or because they have physical disabilities or deformities, or because they have learning disabilities. And maybe everyone in our family has special needs. Everyone in this room has special needs. That is to love and to be loved. Amen. And so I just want to show you a picture. When you hear unplanned equals unwanted equals unloved, I just want to shatter that today. I want to show you a picture of what unwanted looks like. So whatever image you have in your mind, may it be replaced with this. This is just my immediate family, my brothers, my sisters, their spouses, their children, no aunts and uncles. It's just the Bombergers. This is what adoption does. This is all of us. Now the question, when you talk about bioethics, and having lived in this, having God brothers and God sisters who are Down syndrome and have other physical disabilities, visual impairment, this question just has a whole lot of meaning for me. What about fetal disabilities? Well, what about it? What does that even mean? I mean, sometimes there are fetal disabilities. Some people were born without an arm or a leg or fingers. So what? Doesn't make them any less of a human being. And I love the fact that medical technology advances so that some things can be repaired. Like you see here, this article, Pittsburgh doctors perform first of its kind in utero-fetal surgery to repair spina bifida. And then you see things like this, Tampa Bay boy thriving following spina bifida surgery before birth. See, the fetal disability is not the end all. This is why in medical science, you care for both. You love the mama. Actually, I should say all three, because it's a mom and a dad and a child. Just saying, that's how it works. And when there is a fatal diagnosis, it's also not the end. I know a lot of people are pushed into aborting their child rather than have them suffer. But instead of injecting compassion into these situations, they offer only death. But yet there are great resources. Maybe you never heard of the perinatal hospice and palliative care. But these are for people who have the fatal diagnosis. And of course, there are times when the medical professionals are wrong, the doctor is wrong. But in the case where they are right, there are more compassionate resources. In fact, if you go to perinatalhospice.org, it shows you where a list of these programs so that the mother and the father can mourn the loss of their child, even if they're only with them for a few hours. But instead of aborting that child, there is a different sort of closure that happens. Another question, what about the life of the mother? Of course, that inevitably comes up all the time. But why do we care about the life of the mother? Because we care about every human being. And that we care about the value of the mother and the life of the child. Of course, this is used all the time to justify abortion, even though it happens less than 1% of the time. And there are even former abortionists who say abortion is not medically necessary to save the life of a mother. Now you have people like Peter Singer, a bioethicist, I love this. He's a pro-abortion bioethicist who is a founder of the modern animal rights movement. So animals have more rights than humans in his estimation. But his quote is really interesting to me. He says, membership of the species Homo sapiens is not enough to confer a right to life. We have no obligation to allow every being with the potential to become a rational being to realize that potential. But darn it, we gotta save the cats and the dogs and the monkeys. And I love animals, and I think we need to be, of course, kind to animals. But can we be kind to human beings? The most vulnerable ones? Like that poster, by the way. Save the baby humans. But here, you got partial birth. I mean, the fact that we even had to have a partial birth abortion ban act to say, wait, no, it's wrong to partially deliver a child and then crush its skull and suck out, sever the rest of the body parts. But in this article from WAPO, Washington Post, even the abortionist admits, no, it's not, late-term abortions are not because of the life of the mother. In fact, they didn't even admit that it had to do with the life of the mother. It was just for genetic reasons, which means because the fetus, the unborn child, wasn't the picture of perfect. It's amazing. And of course, we inevitably get to this question, as we talk about bioethics and the things that impact us and impact the philosophy, I guess, of how you look at abortion, you inevitably get to this question. Anybody talks about abortion, it will inevitably get here. Well, what about rape? I have a great resource for you. If you go to radiance.life/theheartcases, it shows you the one scientific study, which is from 1996, that they all rely on. It was a study that was published in the Journal of American OBGYNs. And in that, of course, it said that a significant number of pregnancies result from rape-related pregnancies. And of course, that significant number is less than 1%. But of course, those lives have no less value. So I just want to encourage you, when you get into these questions and these conversations, don't fear engaging. We have science on our side, we have history on our side, we have statistics on our side. And I want to give you a little more insight into my life and why this question is so relevant and why you can have an answer to this.
You couldn't see what I would be. It wasn't part of your plan. Stronger than your circumstance, you gave my life a chance. Touching the future before it began. You're the reason I am here. I know deep down in my soul, my life has purpose. I know deep down in my soul, my life has purpose.
I just want to say to you, this is not an abstract thing, people. When you fight for life, when you get engaged in those really uncomfortable conversations, when you pour your entire self into this cause for justice, you make lives like mine and my children. This is my family. We the calls to the Bombs, the Bombergers. My daughter Aaliyah, my oldest daughter Ray, Radiance, the reason for the name of our organization. My wife Bethany, my favorite person on the planet. My son Makai, and my son Justice. But when you fight for life, I'm that tangible result of that fight. So never give up. God bless you guys.